Question number 4, Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. What impact will Fonterra's revised forecast payout have on the government's 2014-15 surplus?
Speaker. Order. Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'd give the same answer that I gave to the leader of New Zealand First, who, not unsurprisingly, was quicker out of the blocks on this issue.
Order. To answer the question.
Mr Speaker, the impact is likely to be negative, but we need to keep it in perspective. The dairy industry represents about 7% of the economy. The other 93% is in reasonably good shape. But there's no doubt that the drop in commodity prices has the effect of shrinking, has the effect that the tax base isn't growing as fast as was expected.
Mr Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
What advice has he had on the impact on farmers and rural communities of the $4.70 payout, given that Dairy NZ has estimated that a quarter of farmers could struggle to meet interest payments and expenses on a payout below $5?
Honourable Bill English.
Oh, Mr Speaker, I've seen that advice, along with other advice which I think is pretty predictable, and that is that the significantly cash flow will have an impact on the servicing industries in rural and provincial areas. The question really is how long is that going to last, and whether they're in shape to handle that. And in our view, they're relatively resilient, but some of them are in for a bit of a tough time.
A supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
In light of that answer, does he agree with John Coyth, Managing Director of Rural Service Business REL Group, who said that the effect of the reduced payout will be, quote, quite severe, and that, quote, even if you live in Auckland, if you naively don't believe it will affect you, it will. We won't come out of this overnight.
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I think he is... The sentiment of those words is roughly right. But again, we've got to keep in perspective. 93% of the economy is in reasonable shape, and the growth projections are pretty solidly around 3% for the next 2 or 3 years. The dairy industry, which has had an absolute record year, announced yesterday a payout that is just a little bit below the average for the last 10 years. So it is not a horrifically low payout, but it certainly is down from the last couple of years, and it will be a bit of a struggle for the industry, but I think they're up to it.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, given to the Minister of Finance, given that the dairy payout is reducing, what impact would it have on dairy farmers if they faced a higher minimum wage, if they faced a capital gains tax on their farm, if they faced an ETS which was far more expensive, if they faced more charges, if they faced a water tax, Mr Speaker, if they faced more regulation?
We get the gist of the question. The Minister can now answer it. Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, one measure of it is at least my impression of how they voted in the election. Even at an $8.40 payout, the dairy industry could not afford a Labor government. Right. So imagine how bad it would be at $5.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is he seriously suggesting that a $6 billion hole in the economy and the flow-on reduction in revenue to the government's books will be filled by other sectors of the economy?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, what I've said consistently is that the negative impact of the lower dairy prices will be offset to some extent by the relative strength of the rest of the economy. And that's not just naive optimism, that's just looking at the fact that the dairy industry is 7% of the economy and the other 93% is in reasonable shape. I don't know why the member is so set on the idea that the drop in one commodity price, it's a crisis. It's a crisis. Determined to have a crisis, which means it must start turning around soon.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Does he take any responsibility for the billion-dollar deficit in today's government accounts, $260 million more than expected, and will he finally admit that there will not be a meaningful surplus in his budget?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes, of course we take some responsibility for the public accounts. I think my signature may even be on them. And of course, that means we also take responsibility for the fact that after 6 years of pretty tight budgets, the public perception of public services is more positive than it ever was under the Labor government. We're delivering more value to more people with more to come, and we also take responsibility for that success.
Question number 5, Ron May.